Hi, I'm Phil. Welcome to my channel where I talk about pop culture in all its forms, including books. Yeah, I talk about books. Honestly, may have been a year and a half since my last non-Doctor Who book review, but I do talk about books. There's the little logo at my end screen. It's got a book. It's part of the channel. I just don't do it very often. But I've been reading this book for far too long, and I need to get some content out of it. It's a thin book. I don't know why it's taken me so long. I've been reading this book, Lord of the Flies, by the way, by William Golding. That's what I'm reviewing today. I've been reading it for about at least 8 months. I bought it some point last year. Didn't start reading it straight away. I think I actually read a chapter and then didn't touch it again for maybe like 3 months. And that was the problem. Now, look, I don't want you to start this review thinking that that's a negative against the book. It's really not. No, admittedly, it didn't grip me so much that I just had to carry on reading. But that doesn't mean it's a bad book. I just didn't prioritise reading very much last year. It's something that I've vowed to change this year. I'm going to read a lot more books. I have so many Doctor Who books I need to catch up on. But I want to read other stuff as well, and I'm going to try and alternate between Doctor Who and something else. I'm going to try and review every book I read for this channel. Really get some use out of that little book logo I've got there. So please don't let the fact that this took me like at least 8 months to read hold anything against it. That's just my own failings as a reader. Now, you may already be familiar with Lord of the Flies. You may have read it in school. It's a popular school text. Personally, didn't read it in school. This is the first time I've ever read it. You may have seen a movie adaptation. You may have seen there was a really good radio drama adaptation on BBC Radio 4, because I bet you're listening to that. I'm sure my audience must listen to Radio 4, don't they? If not, you should. There's some great radio drama on there. Check it out. And there's been films, and there's an old black and white version. There's a more modern 90s version. Is the 90s still modern? Probably not. That makes me sad. So you may already be familiar with it, but if you're not, it's basically a piece of dystopian fiction. Something I didn't actually realise until I was near the end of it. I missed the references to nuclear war that get mentioned. I somehow didn't realise that this was in some kind of fictionalised dystopian future. I just kind of thought it was, hey, it's like set during World War II or something. So somehow I completely missed that. And it was only in reading up on it while I was still reading it that I discovered it was actually a piece of dystopian fiction. And I love dystopian fiction. It's always really interesting. I love all that kind of, examining where humanity could go, where our society could go, and exploring the problems. And I love like things like Black Mirror, things like that. So love dystopian fiction, and this is what this is. It's dystopian fiction. So there's this nuclear war, and these kids are being evacuated, presumably from England. They're definitely all English kids. So things are not going well for England, presumably, in this nuclear war. They're being evacuated, but their plane gets shot down and it lands on a tropical island of some kind, somewhere tropical and remote. The children are the only people that survive, the adult pilot, presumably, and I don't know if there were any other adults on the plane, but they did not survive. Only the children survive. And the children are kind of in two groups. There's the little uns, the sort of age about 6, and then there's the big uns who are between 10 and 12 years old, and they are the oldest people now alive on the island. The first character we get introduced to is Ralph. This is very soon after the crash, and the second one is Piggy. Piggy and Ralph kind of become friends, although Ralph does tease Piggy a lot. Everyone teases Piggy a lot. He's a very overweight child with asthma. He's got glasses. He gets teased a lot in this book, but he's the one that comes up with all of the more sensible ideas, but he doesn't have the charisma, doesn't have the confidence to project them out to the rest of the group. So him and Ralph kind of team up and become this sort of I suppose leadership team for the island initially. Ralph gets elected leader of the group by all of the children present. He has a little bit of a competition in that in Jack, who is the leader of the school choir that has also formed part of this group that has crashed. It's a little subset, the school choir. But Ralph gets elected leader over Jack. Jack's a bit bitter about that. We'll come back to that later. But what Ralph does say, he tries to keep Jack sweet by assigning him a duty. He and his choir are going to be the hunters. They're going to find food. They also find this kind of how they gather everyone in the first place, because they're all a bit scattered around the initial crash site, is they find this shell called conch, and they can blow in it to make a big sound, and that gathers everyone around, and everyone comes to the conch. And the conch becomes this really important sort of symbol of order and democracy throughout the book. And whoever's holding the conch can speak in the group meeting sessions. And it's this really interesting symbolism, which towards the end of the book, when it gets smashed, should say spoilers in this, when it gets smashed, it's the last vestiges of civilization going. It symbolizes that. I think it was really interesting that was in there. Now, as I said, Piggy is a sensible one with sensible plans. He suggests building shelters and all that kind of stuff. Ralph also wants to build a fire, because if there's fire, there's smoke, somebody might see it and rescue them. Very sensible suggestion. But what happens is that the rest of the group, apart from him and Piggy and a couple of others, there's a guy called Simon, there's two twins, apart from those sort of that core group, everyone else kind of abandons the fire. And even though he tries to get a rota going where everyone has a turn manning the fire, the rest of the people want to do more fun stuff. The rest of the children want to do more fun stuff, or go out and hunt, or just can't be bothered, and they just sort of wander off, which leads to a situation where they miss a boat going past because the fire has gone out, and the boat doesn't see the flames and the fire and the smoke because it's gone out. This is the sort of beginning of the end for Ralph's reign as leader in the group. Although he stays leader for a bit longer after that officially, this is the beginning of Jack really beginning to struggle for power against him. And Jack's group, which gradually grows and grows and he loses more people to him, sort of become a separate tribe. And they go really in on the tribal stuff. They end up, stripping most of their clothes off, painting their skin with tribal sort of markings, and they get really savage with their hunting. There's another boy, Simon. At one point, he has a very important hallucination. He's very important to the plot for that reason, and for another coming up, that the hunters managed to actually kill a boar, and they, in celebration, they mount its head on a spike in this clearing area. Well, Simon stumbles into that, and I don't know why, but he has a bit of a hallucination. May have missed that in the thing if there was a reason, but he has a hallucination where the pig talks to him, and the pig is the Lord of the Flies. The Lord of the Flies in the title. Because he's a dead pig's head and he's got flies flying around him and stuff. Now the kids, it started off with the little ones, but it spread to the big ones as well, are very scared of this beast that they keep hearing about and imagining in the forest. There is no real beast, but they're imagining it. And the pig's head, in the hallucination, tells Simon that there is no beast, and that the beast is really them inside of them. Very important for the themes of the book. Jack's tribe get more and more savage, resulting in actual murder. They murder Simon when he comes out talking about the beast, and there's a whole war. Ralph's group is getting less and less. Jack's group's getting more and more and more and more savage, and more descending into sort of barbarians, basically. They are raw, primeval, sort of animal instinct type creatures. And it all comes to a head in the last few chapters, where Piggy gets killed by a giant boulder that they throw down on him. Simon's already dead. The other two people that were still with Ralph have defected, and Ralph is on his own being chased by the rest of the tribe. And just at the very last moment, when you think they're going to catch him, they're saved. A naval officer has found them, and as Ralph is being chased out of a burning forest because they have set fire to the whole island to try and smoke Ralph out, the naval officer is there, and they collapse in tears. All of the kids collapse in tears, crying at their lost innocence. Now, this loss of innocence is just one of the very interesting and thought-provoking themes within this book. When the plane crashes, the children are just that. They're children. They have the desires of children, they act like children, they have the innocence of children. Even the ones that bully and tease and aren't very nice to each other, they're still children. They're still innocent in that childish way. By the end, though, their innocence is gone. They are savages, they are murderers. And that leads to another theme, the darkness within us all. This is something the author seems to be very passionate about. William Golding was in the military during World War II, and from other things he's written, that seems to have affected him massively. He went in before the war very optimistic about humanity. Came out of it the complete opposite. And this book is sort of a reflection of his on that. That given the right circumstances, any of us could fall into this kind of savagery. Even Ralph in the book is tempted. That murder of Simon, that wasn't just the other tribe. At that point in the book, Ralph and Piggy and a few of the others are milling around on the edges of that tribe, of the second tribe that are split away from them, looking for food, when Simon stumbles out and the rest attack him, and they join in that attack. They get carried away and join in it. The only one who doesn't is Piggy. Piggy doesn't even know about it. So even Ralph, our good character that we're rooting for throughout the book, even he is tempted by that dark side of his own human nature. It's really, really interesting. Another theme is the desire for power, epitomised by Jack in this story. When he doesn't get elected leader initially, he's bitter, and it festers within him. He then puts on this extra bravado, this extra aggression. He fosters it, makes himself and moulds himself into this raw, primal, animalistic type person. Or to appear like a good leader. Because in his head, that's what makes a good leader. But in reality, it's just distraction. I mean, in the end of the book, he ends up almost burning down the island just to capture Ralph. It's not the actions of a good leader. They are destroying all of their food sources to catch one man who challenges the way that they have decided to think about themselves. He's not a good leader, but he's distracting enough with his bravado and his aggression to grab the attention of the other people, to lure them away with that from Ralph. It's something we can see throughout our own history since this book has been written. Even throughout history, there has been populist leaders who distract by being ultra aggressive, by creating enemies where there aren't any, by fostering fear. Fear and its effect on a group is another really well explored theme here, actually. How it distorts reality and makes you act even against your own best interests. And it's how they're manipulated by Jack. They fear the monster, they fear the beast they've imagined in their heads. And so, to feel safe, they go to the man who's showing all the bravado, all the aggression. Jack manipulates that against the group's own interests. They could have been saved. They could have been saved if they'd listened to Ralph and lit the fire and kept the fire going. But they don't do that. They give in to their fear of the beast, and Jack manipulates that and almost dooms them. All of those themes are skillfully explored in this book, weaved throughout the chapters, gradually building. In the very early chapters, they're kind of very loosely there. The sort of beginning threads of them are there. You can see them if you look closely or if you know what you're looking for. And then as it builds to the climax, they get more and more prevalent, and they're right in your face at the end. It's expertly done, and I think gives us a lot to think about. I mean, it even gives us a lot to think about even if you don't agree with Golding. I don't necessarily agree with Golding that evil is within us all, which is what he seems to be saying here. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's an interesting point and something interesting to explore, though, and it's interesting to come at this from that angle and just explore it, just to think about it afterwards. Like I said, he explores those really well. On the whole, it's a really well-paced book. However, there is a little bit of a lull in the middle, I'd say. After we've sort of done the initial finding out about all the characters after the crash, and we've learnt sort of what drives them after that point, and before the big climax, I think it really starts kicking off again at the scene where Simon dies. Or I suppose maybe a little bit before that, in the scene and immediately before that where he has the vision with the Lord of the Flies. From then onwards, it starts ramping up again. And it's sort of non-stop by the end. Another criticism I have of the book, though, is that sometimes it feels like we're missing out on some key moments because he's not showing them to us. He's sort of just telling us they happened. This happens several times, I noticed. There will just be moments where they've been building up to something, might be sort of a scrap between somebody or a confrontation, and they build up to it, and he glosses over it really quickly. It'll either be the 2 lines of dialogue will be the big confrontation, and yet it's still made out like it was a massive thing. The line after it, or the chapter starting after it, will talk about how it was a big thing, but we didn't see it. And that happens a few times, so that's my main negative for this book. Other than that, I think it's written really well, but there were several points where I did think, hold on, is that it? Are they not going to show us more of that thing happening? Are they not going to describe it more? It seemed very blunt and a bit anticlimactic in parts throughout. Conversely, though, the very end was really exciting, really well done, building up to tension, and even though it ended really suddenly, Ralph is being chased from the forest is on fire, the whole island is on fire, and then, bang, there's the naval officer, and they're saved. It ends really abruptly, but it doesn't feel like the abruptness of the ending is a bad thing. It kind of works. And then all the kids just start crying because they realise they've been saved. They realise what they've descended into. And they realise their innocence has been lost. And it's a really powerful ending, I think. It's a really good book. And I wish I'd read it quicker. Like I said, I never read this for school, but I'm glad I've read it now. Like all good dystopian fiction, it makes you think. Makes you carry on thinking after you've read it as well. It's, makes you think and consider the paths that we might go down, we could go down, we might have gone down at one point. It's really interesting stuff. Have you read this? What did you think of the book? What did you think of the characters? Let me know in the comments below. I think Ralph was the most interesting character in this book. I love the kind of struggle that he went through in his own mind about whether or not, that those temptations to go to those dark places that the others had gone to. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed that. What did you think? Did you like it? Have you read it? Let me know in the comments below. Also, I'm going to try and do more book reviews on this channel. I'm going to mixture. I've got some Doctor Who books to get through. The very next review I do will be a Doctor Who book. In fact, I'm almost finished reading this one, so that'll be my next book review. And then I want to read another. I want to try and alternate Doctor Who with non-Doctor Who. So let me know in the comments below what piece of sort of classic literature, the kind of thing, something that you think that's on like 100 books you should read before you die type list, something that I really should read. Piece of science fiction, piece of fantasy, can be anything. Try and keep nothing like this like that thick, because that'll take me forever. No Game of Thrones style level of books here, because it'll take me all year to read. So let me know in the comments below if you've got any suggestions of what I could read and review next. Thank you for watching, and I will be... look, here's some more videos. Here's the last non-Doctor Who book I reviewed, Foundation by Isaac Asimov, science fiction book. It was good. See what I said about it, other than the fact that it was overall quite good. There. And I will see, and there's another video YouTube thinks you might like. See you soon. Goodbye.